Welcome to the beginning of your rotorcraft journey and our first helicopter lesson. My name is Paul Martin, and I will be your flight instructor. I must say, it is a very beautiful time of the year to begin your helicopter trainings at Grenoble-le-Versailles Aerodrome. Meet our trainer helicopter, Cabri G2. You already know how the flight control surfaces of airplanes work, right? But do you understand how a helicopter turns without ailerons and speeds up without elevator? Here, look at the Cabri's main rotor. This is our main control surface. By tilting the main rotor disc forward, backward, left, or right, we can change the direction of the thrust vector and move the helicopter in the chosen direction. As with most French-designed helicopters, the main rotor blades advance in a clockwise direction. What do you think we need the tail rotor for? Walk closer and look at it. By changing the tail rotor's thrust, we can control the direction that the nose of the helicopter points. The Cabri G2 utilizes a fenestrine-type tail rotor. It differs from a conventional open tail rotor by being integrally housed within the tail boom. Now let's continue our training inside the cockpit. Get in and buckle up. Welcome aboard. Don't be surprised that you're sitting on the right side. Unlike in airplanes, pilots typically sit on the right seat in helicopters. Now, let's make you familiar with the Cabri's flight controls. Look here, this is what we call the collective lever, or simply collective. We use collective to climb or descend, or in other words, to control our vertical speed. Try raising it up and lowering it down. Make sure to leave it in the most downward position. Here's what we call the cyclic stick, or just cyclic. It looks similar to the airplane's stick, doesn't it? It behaves very similarly too, at least in a forward flight. Left or right inputs cause the helicopter to roll into a turn, and forward and back inputs change the pitch attitude. Try moving it left and right, forward and aft. On the top of the cyclic stick, you can see a cyclic trim knob. The Cabri uses a dual-axis electric trim, allows you to completely release the static forces in flight, both longitudinal and lateral. Try pushing the knob left and right, forward and aft. And finally, the anti-torque pedals, located in the same place as the rudder pedals in an airplane. They serve a similar purpose, controlling the direction that the nose of the aircraft points. In a hover flight, they help you to control yaw and heading, but in forward flight, they serve the same purpose as in airplanes, adjusting the side slip angle. I'm sure you have already spotted what we call the six-pack. 6 primary instruments all airplanes also have. Look at the altimeter, for instance. As you see, the ground elevation here is around 720 feet. An interesting fact related to altitudes. In forward flight, a helicopter can fly much higher than when it's hovering. After our hovering training, you will understand why it's like that. Now look at the airspeed indicator. What can we learn just by looking at it? You can see right away that the indications start from 20 knots. The caution range lasts up to 45 knots, and you should never exceed 130 knots airspeed. Why should we be cautious when flying slow? I will show why in our next training. Now, would you please look at the vertical speed indicator? It is very important to monitor VSI, especially on descent. If you descend faster than 300 feet per minute at low airspeed, you may settle your helicopter into its own downwash. This is called a vortex ring state, and it is an emergency situation you will eventually learn to deal with. But for now, simply get used to monitoring your VSI, just like you monitor altitude, airspeed, and engine parameters. Another thing to remember while flying is to keep the fuselage in the correct streamline position. For that, we monitor the turn coordinator ball, just like we do in airplanes. Or the more sensitive indicator, the yaw string, just like we do in gliders. The ball and the yaw string should be kept in the center. We won't use other classic instruments much in our trainings, because we will mostly fly by visual references. However, you do need to know about the EPM, which stands for Electronic Pilot Monitor. Let's start the engine and avionics to see it running. Great! Now you see the electronic pilot monitor running. EPM combines all common motor and rotor monitoring instruments on a single LCD screen, as well as the in-flight fuel management. The thing we're most interested in is the Smart Power Indicator. Have a closer look at it. It is called the MLI, which stands for Multiple Limit Indicator. It is a special feature of the Cabri G2. A red line shows the available performance and limits at a glance. We will refer to the power indications a lot in our trainings. Okay, enough talking. Time to get up in the air and fly. In our next training, you will have your first taste of piloting a Cabri G2. Here we are, flying along the Grezavon Valley in the French Alps. Look around while I am piloting. On your left-hand side, you can see the Belladon mountain range. And on your right-hand side, there are the Chartreuse Mountains. Beautiful, aren't they? On the count of 3, I will give you control of the helicopter. Prepare to slightly push cyclic forward to maintain the correct attitude. 3, 2, 1. It's yours now. Using the cyclic, keep the helicopter in a straight and level flight along the Isar River you can see below. I will take care of the collective control and maintaining the altitude so you can focus on our speed and ground track. Reach cruise speed of 80 knots. Push the cyclic to speed up or pull the cyclic to slow down. knots through all maneuvers. To maintain the same speed, try to remember the position of the horizon line and maintain it visually in the same place. That will make sure you are flying with the same speed. Keep flying straight until the river begins curving to the right. See how you always need to keep the cyclic deflected to maintain the same attitude? After you've found a proper cyclic position, use the cyclic's trim to release static forces. Feels better now, right? Here we are. Let's try some turns now. You see the river is turning right? Try to fly above the river and turn right together with its curve. There you are. Now make a sharp left turn following the river line. But this time try to make the turn coordinated. Don't forget to use pedals to avoid any slip and skid, just like in airplanes. Now you see how little pressure on the controls you need to control a helicopter. Let's do something you never do in airplanes. Let's bring our airspeed to 0 knots. Gently pull the cyclic back until you reach 0 knots. This is called hovering out of ground effect. Feels interesting for airplane pilots, doesn't it? Keep the cyclic back to maintain 0 knots airspeed. Now try to use your trim to move the neutral position of your cyclic. You can trim the helicopter when you hover, when you climb, or when you are in cruise. This releases the forces on the stick and lets you better feel the controls. This is called hovering out of ground effect. Feels interesting for airplane pilots, doesn't it? Now try to use your trim to move the neutral position of your cyclic. You can trim the helicopter when you hover, when you climb, or when you are in cruise. This releases the forces on the stick and lets you better feel the controls. Nice. But just when you thought flying helicopters is all easy, I want to admit that currently I'm helping you stabilize our helicopter. You see, since we slowed down, the airflow over the tail is not enough to counteract the helicopter's rotating tendencies anymore. So I keep pushing the right pedal and adjusting our cyclic a little to stabilize our flight. Let me show you what happens when I stop helping you. Okay, I'm assisting you again. Don't let these rotating tendencies scare you. It is a fun challenge, and you will master it in no time during our next trainings. You were really good with maintaining the correct speed and making turns. See you in our hovering trainings.